Over the last several years, Metallica fans have really pushed hard for Metallica to get the nod to perform at the NFL Super Bowl halftime show. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And today we're going to look at some of the reasons why the NFL continues to refuse to allow Metallica to perform at that halftime show. And now we have some interesting data to support the claims that Metallica rather is very, very worthy of performing the halftime show. The data we're going to show you underscores the fact that this band is certainly not washed up, and furthermore is actually bigger than most of the artists that have played the Super Bowl halftime show over the last few years. Now, before we get too deep into things, a little bit of background. Metallica fans really started pushing for the band to perform the halftime show initially a few years ago when the Super Bowl halftime show was going to take place in San Diego, California, Metallica's stomping grounds. Eventually, the demand and the voices were so loud that they got something called the night before. Now, this was not necessarily a direct NFL-sponsored event, but it was enough to somewhat placate fans that had signed a petition in droves for Metallica to perform the halftime show. It was sort of NFL's way to say, we've already chosen who we want to perform the halftime show, but you can have the little night before, little pre-party that we let some Pepsi Cola company sponsor that isn't really relative and has a minor, tiny 1% fraction of the viewers that the Super Bowl has. And it wasn't just Metallica fans that were pushing for the band to perform at the halftime show. Their peers also rallied behind them. Disturbed actually spoke out and said they wanted Metallica to perform the halftime show, and there were certainly a lot of others who probably felt that way too. But still, nonetheless, it unfortunately just didn't happen. And even this year alone, this isn't something that's really been publicized, but at the time of this video, there are over 62,000 people that have signed a petition for Metallica to perform at this Super Bowl halftime show. It's been happening every year since that initial petition started to circulate, and still Metallica goes ignored. But last year at the Super Bowl halftime show, things were really insulting when the NFL hired, I guess, what they consider to be a real rock band to perform at the halftime show, none other than Maroon 5. And we're going to point out to you why that is so wacky here in just a moment. Because on the scale of massive performers, Maroon 5, from a financial standpoint, which is very closely linked to popularity, isn't even in the same neighborhood as Metallica. Despite what radio plays and Twitter trend would have you believe, live concert numbers and album sales do not lie. And they don't hold a candle to Metallica. They don't even stand above their shoelaces, comparatively from a data perspective. Today, Forbes published a comprehensive list of the top earning performers in 2019. And it was fascinating to see where Metallica lined up compared to the other artists who had recently performed at the Super Bowl within the last 5 years. And the results were absolutely astounding. For context, Maroon 5 wasn't even on the list, but they're all over radio, but they weren't even placing on the list. Adam Levine, as an individual who also has TV deals and things like that, also was nowhere to be found on the list. So let's take a look at the numbers to see where those musicians lined up in comparison to Metallica, and let's try and figure out why Metallica, for some reason, isn't good enough to perform the NFL's halftime show. All right, so these are the real numbers here taken directly from the Forbes list, and we're going to look at these and see where Metallica lies as compared to the other artists who were in the Super Bowl halftime show over these last few years. At the beginning of the list, you have Taylor Swift. Okay, she earned a whopping $185 million. You have Kylie Jenner, Kanye West, Lionel Messi, Ed Sheeran, and then the list goes on. Interestingly enough, you have the Eagles, who raked in $100 million. They've been doing very well, apparently, on tour. At number 9, you have Dr. Phil. So we continue on. The list goes on. You've got people like The Rock, Aaron Rodgers, LeBron James, Elton John, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and a lot of worthy people who you could certainly make a case either have performed at the halftime show or should perform at the halftime show fair and square.
So why do you suppose these people are clapping right now? I really don't know why they're clapping. I don't deserve any applause.
Most notably, Beyonce did perform at the halftime show, and she is certainly a top-tier star that is worthy of a performance like that. But you continue to number 30. Beyonce is the only person, as a matter of fact, who has recently performed the Super Bowl halftime show that is listed higher than Metallica. And you have to go way down the list to find anybody who has recently performed at the Super Bowl halftime show to get to Katy Perry, who is immediately followed by Justin Timberlake. Each one of them have massive catalogs, have been on tour and doing performances, but for some reason, Metallica continues to go above them. There are a lot of people that say rock music is dead and that rock music doesn't have a place in popular culture anymore, but it's hard to believe that that isn't entirely manufactured at this point. To see the numbers game where people are buying their music, streaming their songs, and going to their live shows, especially going to their live shows. And you definitely can't pretend that Metallica sets a bad example for audiences and they're not worthy of performing because they may encourage kids to do bad things. As a matter of fact, Metallica is arguably one of the most charitable acts that would have performed the Super Bowl halftime show in the last decade. Their foundation, the All Within My Hands Foundation, leads the band to individually donate tens of thousands of dollars from their shows in every town they have performed in over the last several years. And beyond that, Metallica claims they've been doing this privately for quite some time as well. They also lead a giving day every year through their foundation where they go to local food banks and donate food and money as well. And then all the Metallica fans that come out get the chance to go to a private concert that Metallica does entirely pro bono, again, to encourage their fans to do good in the community. Another guy who coincidentally the NFL chose to go with in Metallica's old stomping grounds, Bruno Mars, is 20 plus positions behind Metallica. And he's performed in 2 Super Bowl halftime shows over the last 5 years. Even Ariana Grande, who is arguably one of the biggest pop stars in the world right now, is listed behind Metallica. And no doubt she's probably deserving to perform a halftime show. But you have to wonder, are there tens or hundreds of thousands of people demanding that Metallica perform the halftime show? Are there not well-intentioned fans overwhelmingly supporting Metallica performing the halftime show rather than Ariana Grande? She makes great music and people respect her and she's likely a great person. But are her fans really demanding that she performs the halftime show? And unbelievably, another Super Bowl halftime performer, Lady Gaga, is at number 90 on the list. And she's recently performed with Metallica. She probably supports Metallica performing the halftime show. It's just hard to argue that there are fan bases out there that are demanding more so than Metallica year-round continuously to perform the halftime show. And also, Metallica has a long-time demonstrated history of being NFL fans. Look at James. James loves the Oakland Raiders. He has for decades. Everyone knows it. And for those wondering whether or not Metallica themselves are willing to perform the halftime show, the answer is yes. James Hetfield has said as much. He gave an interview a couple of years ago and he actually spelled out the reasons why Metallica will probably never perform the halftime show. He said, quote, "I can't dance, I can't jump around, I'm not an acrobat, I'm not a variety show, you know? We're artists, we're a band, we love playing songs. We're not gonna fly through the air on a sparkly star with a unicorn," clearly referencing Katy Perry's performance. He added, "It's become less about music, unfortunately, and more about the spectacle. When we played for the 50th anniversary of the NFL right here in our hometown and they didn't have us do it, that would have been the time. Maybe that time has passed. Maybe the NFL will finally listen to fans, not just Metallica fans who roll their eyes year after year at the halftime performance." Here's some press from last year's gig when Maroon 5 performed from the New York Times, who said, "Maroon 5 barely leaves a mark at the Super Bowl halftime show." That's not good press from one of the premier journalistic institutions in the United States. So why is the NFL so stubborn when it comes to listening to fans, when it comes to performing the halftime show? The answer is money. The NFL is solely driven by money. That's all they care about and that's all they know. Sponsorship dollars, ad dollars, and building their brand. They want to bring in these pop musicians because they think that Ariana Grande fans or Katy Perry fans or Justin Timberlake fans, and I'm not speaking for the entire fan base, but they certainly have a large audience of people who may not regularly watch the NFL. So they think that when they perform the halftime show, they're going to go, oh, yeah, I like football, and I suddenly understand what an I formation is, and they're going to keep watching year after year. That is not the case. You have a band like Metallica, which almost entirely fits in with their fan base. The players listen to Metallica. The fans listen to Metallica. Football teams run out onto the field to Metallica. So it's quite likely that the NFL just doesn't care because they have those fans anyway. They're going to keep watching no matter what. At this point, all fans can keep doing is continue to do what they've been doing, which is rally the NFL and be vocal. And maybe one day they'll actually listen and Metallica will get to perform a halftime show. Maybe they'll be given a chance to put on a beautiful, family-friendly spectacle that's diverse, that brings in other artists like they are surely willing to do, like they have demonstrated they're willing to do in the past, where they have willingly performed with pop artists like Lady Gaga. They have done this sort of thing, the type of thing the NFL is willing to do. Metallica's willing to play ball with the NFL. If only the NFL would be willing to play ball with them. But we'll just have to wait and see. So if you want to take action, I have linked to the petition in the comments down below. You can check that out. It's also in the description. Be sure to sign that petition, and let's hope that we can reach as many people as possible and get the NFL to hopefully give Metallica a chance. If you want to reach out, please be respectful. This is not about disrespecting the NFL or being rude to them or trying to berate them into getting Metallica to perform. Let's show them that we can be respectful and with class, and maybe they will actually give Metallica a chance, and we won't just yell at them and rage at them until they give us our way, because that will never happen. That's all for now. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on that content. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you all very soon.